Back here on NFL Live, reigning Offensive Player of the Year Jackson Smith-Njigba, as expected, got paid. Yesterday, he signed a 4-year, $168.6 million deal with over $120 million in guarantees. Ties him to Seattle through 2031. JSN will make over $42 million per year on this extension, nearly $2 million more than Jamar Chase, for the highest ever by a wide receiver. The newly minted Super Bowl champ, the third wideout to average $35+ million a year, along with Chase and Justin Jefferson. All three of those deals signed in the last 2 years. So, Tim, as expected, a record deal, an expected record deal. How do you like Seattle getting this done and now?
I love it for Seattle. I think it's smart. It's why John Schneider is one of the best GMs in the game. Listen, you know JSN can play. And rather than, taking a posture of saying, all right, you got another year left on your rookie deal, then you have the 5th-year option, and then we could franchise you if we really wanted to. And so, there should be no urgency because we're talking about 3 years from now when you actually could become free. Rather than taking that posture, Seattle's basically said, let's do an extension, make you the highest paid receiver in the game because we know you can play. We've got the ability to do it because we're not paying the top of the market for our quarterback, and it alleviates some of that stress. It spreads out the deal, for a while, which is good for the club. And then it also gives, Jackson Smith-Njigba another opportunity at free agency later in his career. So I think at every turn, this makes a ton of sense for a guy that's got 220 catches in the last 2 seasons with 2 different quarterbacks.
I feel the Seattle offense rings fresh on their fingers. Still some retooling ahead. Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker is with the Chiefs. How do you see the Seahawks trying to fill that backfield void?
I want to make Mel happy right now, perhaps a little bit agitated, I should say, because Jadarian Price is who I had them taking at the end of the 2nd round, 64th overall. Now, he's 43 on the big board for me, is Jadarian Price. He's a big physical runner. He can blaze the 40 time. He also is a threat as a kickoff return man. Had 3 returns for a touchdown this past season. The question for Jadarian Price is just 6 receptions last season for Notre Dame, playing behind Jeremiah Love. But he's got barely any tread on the tires because he was essentially a backup running back during his Notre Dame career. But
you imagine a field where we would have projected Jadarian Price after the 2025 season had he gone back and performed like Jeremiah Love, anywhere close to that, improved on those receptions, don't fumble the football. With his running skills, boy, he attacks, he breaks tackles, he's got game-breaking speed. He is also a dynamic kickoff returner. Jadarian Price field will not be there at 64. I don't think he's going to be there for Seattle at 64. If he were, it'd be a great pick. I just got to believe the second running back behind Love is Jadarian Price. And I got to think early to mid-second round, he comes off the board. At one point, I even thought maybe late first round for this kid, who, like I said, once he gets in the NFL, he'll catch the ball. And he will be also, like I said, a kickoff returner that you want because that's going to get you out to the 40, midfield, or even plus that territory. So when you look at Jadarian Price, where we say, hey, he's not multidimensional, that kick return ability is excellent. And as a pure runner, he has few peers.
And few peers in that per capita explosive play market. 21% of Price's carries went for 10 or more yards, 3rd best of any running back in the nation last year. Field, let's dive a little deeper into your latest mock. Take us through the first few picks for the teams at the top, starting with the Raiders.
The only pick I can say with absolute certainty is the Raiders taking Fernando Mendoza, #1 overall. The quarterback out of Indiana won the Heisman Trophy this past season. Clutch production, one of his friends, against top 10 teams this past season. 6 games, 15 touchdowns. 3 interceptions. He had 3 separate games against top 10 ranked teams at the time, which completed 85% of his passes or more. He was excellent wire to wire for Indiana. They go to defense next, and that would be Ohio State's Caden McDonald. Big nose tackle would be an ideal fit for Rob Leonard, the new defensive coordinator for the Raiders. Interior defensive line, an area to address. Let's go to the Jets, who got 4 letters in their name. They also have 4 picks in the top 44. They start with David Bailey, #2 overall, going with a pass rusher out of Texas Tech, who had 14.5 sacks this past season. No player had more in the FBS. 16, they grabbed Mekhi Lemon, the Biletnikoff winner out of USC. He plays much bigger than his stature. He is an absolute maven with the football after the catch. 2 players in round 2, Colton Hood from Tennessee and also Kristen Miller, defensive tackle from Georgia. Finally, the Cardinals make a little bit of a splash, not just at number 3 overall, where they get Arvell Reese from Ohio State. Plenty of upside for this green and raw pass rusher, but he had a pressure rate of nearly 20% last season on the 97 pass rushing snaps he had. They also make a move to trade up for former Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson. Number 26 overall is where I have him landing in this mock. This would be like the Giants last year. Pass rusher early, quarterback later in round 1. I will be boots on the ground, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, tomorrow for Ty Simpson's pro day. Clearly the second best quarterback in this year's draft.
Need to give you a chance to exhale as you look at the Cardinals' depth chart. 33-year-old Jacoby Brissett back, started 12 games last year. They also brought in Gardner Minshew in free agency. Tim, how do you feel about Fields' proposed trade? Not dissimilar, like you said, to what the Giants did, getting back in the first round to get Jackson Dart. Yeah. Ty Simpson to the Cardinals here at 26?
Look, I do think Simpson makes sense as a first rounder. I also wouldn't be completely shocked if he were, to fall out of the first round. So I just would say that if you're a team that looks at him and thinks, yeah, he can be a starter in this league, and so it makes sense for us to move back into the first round, so to have that fifth-year option on a quarterback when, depending on where you go, let's say Arizona in this case, maybe you're not the starter this season. Maybe you're not the starter for the first half of the season. Who knows what it is? But in that, scenario, I think you need to have the fifth year to really know if you have your quarterback or not. So I think it makes sense. I do think there's a lot to like about Ty Simpson. I think, look, he's been coached well to play the position. I think he's got a lot of really, really good film, in terms of how it relates to the amount of the sample size that you have of him as a starter. I think he's a better athlete than people would think that he would be. He just doesn't, necessarily possess some of the things that you look for, in guys that typically go in the first half of the first round, which is just, taller, bigger, more physically talented, bigger sample size, things that, give you more confidence that it is going to work out and work out sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and Tim, the number of starts has become a hot button topic of late. And, there are people that believe, and I understand this angle, that it's about evaluating whatever you have on tape. There's a lot of good that you see from Ty Simpson, but the larger the sample size, Tim, one of the other dynamics that comes into play is that the more a player has played, the more you understand what the real limitations are that might not show up in that small 15 college starts sample size. But of note here for Arizona, and why I believe this team can feel some level of confidence that they can strategically navigate the board in the first round, is that unlike most other positions on the roster, there's only a finite number of teams that are realistically going to be looking for a quarterback this early in the draft. We're talking about, obviously, Arizona, maybe Pittsburgh, maybe the New York Jets, maybe a team like the Miami Dolphins, although I am skeptical after the Malik Willis signing, maybe the Cleveland Browns. So it allows you to say, we got to get to this spot to have a pretty good chance to land the player that we believe in.
Yeah, and Field, I think you bring up an amazing point about the number of starts, right? Bill Parcells had his commandments. I think he wanted 45 starts or something like that.
Big number.
In his commandments. But yeah, and so we're not seeing that now. But I do like, and I would ask you if you think that when you just look at Anthony Richardson, you look at Trey Lance, you look at, even go back further, Mark Sanchez, or, I'm just curious is the feedback on it, because I would argue that it's just a guess when you don't have the number of starts in the data. Like, nobody knows. You might get it right. Ryan Tannehill, I think, had 17 starts. Yeah. It worked out. He ended up being a great player. But you don't know if you don't have that information.
That's my biggest thing, Tim, is I hear, I get it. We can only work with what we have. But when you have 35 starts like Fernando Mendoza, it's not just the stuff that we like that we have seen on tape. It's the stuff that we know by now. Like, these are the limitations for Fernando Mendoza. He's got to find a way to improve his in-pocket sort of awareness and not take as many sacks, even though he improved in that category this past season. For Ty Simpson, if he plays 30 games, there might be things that really haven't reared themselves up to this point that we would understand. We'd have to navigate at the next level. I think he's a really good player. He is inside my top 32 for prospects. He just is a trickier evaluation than a guy like Fernando because wire to wire last season, Fernando Mendoza in Indiana dominated the college football landscape. Not just the teams early in the schedule who they should have beaten. The teams late in the season that have been traditional powerhouses during the college football playoff era, Indiana took down all of them.
And if you're a team like Arizona taking a quarterback who you feel you may have to develop, only 15 college starts, a realistic assessment about where you stand in a very deep FC West, you wouldn't imagine there's going to be an urge to rush him up the depth chart. You have, if there are holes in the game, you have time